And here we go. How are you today, Caroline? You all right?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. Another week done.
Yes.
Another week behind, another month behind us. We are
Oh.
next week is April. Very exciting. Busy. April's always busy for us. We've got lots of birthdays in the family, so we're always having big family gatherings. So that's quite. And we've got half term at schools as well. 2 weeks of having the kids back home. So I'll be in the office more often than not. We've got some people joining us, so as we just let people into the room.
Okay.
Thank you everybody for joining us as usual. It's great to see some familiar names. Morning, Jade. So the all of the chat functions are open, so please feel free to say hello so we know everything's working on the tech side of things. Good morning, Rachel. Good morning, everybody. It's nice to see that tech is working for us today, so that's really, really good. Morning, Natalie. We had quite a few people sign up to this today, so it's quite topical, Caroline. All right, we're all trying to look to improve our suitability reports at the moment, making them real sort of easy on the eye, compliance friendly, and everything in between. So it's going to be a really good day. Charlie, Kieran, Tony, good morning, everybody. So as you can see today, we are joined by the wonderful Caroline, who is going to be walking us through the effectiveness of suitability reports and improving those suitability reports. Evaluate and enhance templates based on client and industry feedback. So it's going to be a really, really good session. So please use this time to your advantage. If you've got any questions at any time throughout the slide deck, please stop, make a note, write your question down, send it over, and we'll get it answered as quick as we can. So don't be shy to get in the chat function. We've got a lot of people in the room now. So what we'll do, we'll get started, Caroline, just so you know, we don't overrun. So I like to keep it close to the hour as possible. So as always, thank you everybody for joining us again on our weekly webinars, Friday mornings at 10 o'clock. We do plan for the session to run for the full hour, if you like, 45 to 50 minutes. There may be some time at the end for some Q&A as well. So as I said, use all of the functions. We'll get some answers back to you as soon as we can. We do have some polls to run today as well, so please participate. It's great when people start participating and we can have some group discussions around that as well. So let's dive in and make the most of our time together today. As long as the slide deck allows me to skip. As always, look, new slide deck today. It's built by AI, so just bear with me if I look a little bit thrown off because it is all very new. So first things first, welcome everybody to the Financial Planning Club. My name's Lee Old. I'm the co-founder of the Financial Planning Club and Anthony George Recruitment. If we look at the Financial Planning Club, we provide one-to-one bespoke business support. So that's one-to-one consultancy for business owners within the financial planning world. Everything we do right now impacts our results in the next 3 to 6 months. So whether we're crafting bespoke, brand new 3-year plans or updating existing ones, we're developing 12-month roadmaps and we're breaking them down into 90-day sprints. It's so important of having your eye on the goal, but also to break that down into smaller, smart targets, if you like, smart goals, smart objectives. So we know you're on track to achieving what you want to achieve in the next 3 years. So that's the club. That's the membership for business owners. If we was to touch on the core areas of your business that we can support, that is your growth and your strategy, that is your operations and your team, that's your client relations and your marketing. And it's also that personal coaching and development that is so important as well. So whether we're running bespoke workshops for your business or giving you the ultimate BD blueprint, we look at every single aspect of your business. If we're not moving the needle, why are we doing it? We need to be moving the needle. We need to be steering the ship towards the 3-year plan. And we're on some incredible journeys with some incredible businesses at the moment. So if you want to know more about the club and what we're doing, please feel free to get in touch with us. There is a famous saying, if you don't know where you're going, you'll probably end up somewhere else. It is about planning for long-term success. You have to be confident in your strategy. The 90-day sprints, we meet you every single 90 days and we see where we're at, what we're up to, and what we need to be doing differently. It's a community focus. Everything that we do is built on a community aspect. So it's about collaborating with other business owners. It's about sharing connections and sharing those expertise. Somebody has been there and done it, navigated those challenges and come out the other side. You're not doing it alone. Do it with other people as well. So It's a real community focus that we have here at the club. Scorecard your business. Don't forget, we send these emails to you at the end of the session as well. So there'll be a link to Scorecard your business. It's so important. It's a great tool. It rates or it scores the 4 aspects of the business that we can definitely help you with. So much of our time is spent working in our businesses rather than on them. It's so important to take a step away. Assess and reflect is always the key to growth and improvement. So as I said, we'll email these out. This is a 2 or 3 minute exercise. It really takes no time at all. It'll ask you some questions. It's just a multiple choice tick box exercise, and you'll also get a personalized email from Amanda with a little bit of an action plan as well. So please do, if you want to get involved with that. I've got 2 events to announce today, which is really cool. So the first event is the power of influence. That is on Thursday, the 8th of May. We are in London. It is exclusive for business owners of financial planning firms. We're going to have 60 business owners in a room. We are building out personal and intergenerational motivators. That's going to be a really good session. Dimensional is also joining us for a part on client referrals, which is so important. And then we're going to be bringing together the ultimate client referral machine for you and your business. So it's an all-day event. It's absolutely free to business owners. So if you want to come and explore what the Financial Planning Club is all about firsthand, come along Thursday, the 8th of May. I believe we've probably got about 10 or 12 seats left. So if you want to come along, please feel free to do so. The next event is a really good one, actually. It's a paraplanner face-to-face event, really by huge demand. So for those of you that don't know, we run a WhatsApp group for paraplanners. I think there's over 500 paraplanners now in the WhatsApp group. And when we asked for some feedback on how we can improve our community, they said face-to-face events, and that's what we're bringing this year. So on Tuesday, the 29th of April, we are heading over to Timeline. Timeline is going to be doing a real good strategy session on cash flow modeling. And it's all about exploring the reliability, the client outcomes, and being confident in your communication techniques as a paraplanner. All right, so that's a really good session. Again, it's going to be quite a small group. It's going to be very close, very intimate. Everything we do is collaboration. So you're going to hear from us, Timeline, and you're going to be collaborating with other paraplanners in the room as well. So I believe we've got about 3 or 4 seats left on that event as well. So that's in London on Tuesday, the 29th. I'm nearly there, guys. Bear with us. Engage in our specialized community as always. As I said, the WhatsApp community is absolutely fantastic. We've got a couple of separate groups now. We've got groups for financial advisors and mortgage advisors, separate groups. We cross-reference everybody on the FCA register to make sure they are a financial advisor, they are a mortgage advisor. We like to keep the groups very relevant, very on track, and making the conversations very relevant to individuals within that group. We have separate study groups as well. So whether you're working towards chartered through the CII or the LIBF, there's separate groups where you can hang out with other individuals that are on the same career progression journey as yourselves. We get exclusive discounts from some training providers, recruitment as well. So there's a lot of things going on the discount side of things as well. It's all about new ideas. It's all about hearing ideas from outside of the 4 walls of your business. Some people can get stuck in such a rut. They've got a couple of questions about a technical case and they want a little bit of support. You've got 500 paraplanners in a WhatsApp group, and believe you me, it pops off all day long. Caroline, I think you're in the group, right?
Yeah.
And you've muted it?
Maybe.
Yes, you've muted it. I tell everybody to mute it because it goes off all day, every day. It's not there to distract you. It's there to add value. When you've got a problem or a concern, or you just want some support, you'll get instant results. It's really good. So we'll also email you a link where you can join our community as well. You're all here today on our webinars. They run every single week. But if you're interested in podcasts, we do run a podcast series. We get our business owners on there so you can hear from some really cool and exciting business owners at the minute, and all of our collaborators as well. Caroline, you've been on one of our podcasts, right?
Yeah.
See, so far this is going really well. Just to touch on our collaborators, who they are. They're our strategic partners. They're our educational providers. They're technology solutions. They're compliance support and everything in between. All right. So we do collaborate with some really cool firms. Some of the firms and their brands can be seen here It's all about making sure our missions align, and that mission is to innovate the industry. It's to push the industry forward and start bringing some new ideas, because it's an industry that can be stuck in its ways, an industry that doesn't like much change when it comes to technology. I mean, who thought there would be flexible working within financial planning? Rewind the clock five years ago and you'd have said no chance. Look at us and look at where we are today. So our collaborators add so much value, not only to our community members, but also our business owners as well. So big shout out and a big thank you to our collaborators. Our next webinar, same time next week. We're with Timeline. It's all about cash flow modeling. It's assumption versus evidence-based. It's going to be a really good interactive session, this one as well. All right, so please feel free again to sign up to these. You'll get an email about it afterwards as well. That's enough of me. That's enough of the club. We are now joined with the amazing Caroline. She's a collaborator of the club as well. She helps so many of our members. It's about operational support, learning and development, mentoring. Caroline, you've been doing it 25 years now. You know your stuff pretty well. You're the founder of Sparrow Solutions. The floor is yours. I'll stop sharing my screen and please take it away with what you have in store for us today. That'd be great.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Lee. Yeah, so let me just share my screen. There we go. Can everybody see that?
We can indeed.
Super. Yeah. So thanks, Lee. Yeah. So I have been working in financial services for probably around about 25 years, like Lee said. And most of those have actually been spent in financial planning and paraplanning. And I've been an administrator, trainee paraplanner. I have been a head of technical. I've been in client meetings, and I've also done lots and lots and lots of behind the scenes stuff, such as designing templates and creating client communications, as well as training paraplanners and financial advisors as well. So I'm now running Sparrow Paraplanning and Sparrow Solutions, which Lee said, and I provide a whole range of outsourced services to financial planning businesses. So that is a bit more about me. But obviously today, I can change slides. So today we're going to be looking at essential elements for really great suitability report templates. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown of some key ideas, some hints and tips, how to make really effective templates that result in really personalised client reports. And we all know that under the Consumer Duties Client Understanding Rule, we have to make sure that all of our communications for clients are transparent, easily understandable and really accessible for clients. And this is particularly so for suitability reports, because these are obviously what we're using to explain to the client what the recommendations we're making for them, the advice that we're giving, and how it's actually going to meet their, ultimately going to meet their goals. And underpinning a really clear, client-focused compliant report is a robust, well-structured template. So today we're going to be looking at what the essential elements are for creating those. And we'll all have different ways of actually accessing suitability templates. And it might be through your CRM, you might use a document designer, report writing software. And I know some people are now actually using AI to do it as well. And others are simply using a Word document. So during the session though, I'm going to be looking at templates from a content and design perspective and tips for layout and style, rather than any actual technological side of it, of things that we can be doing. This is actually what we should be saying in there and how we should be saying it. So, got some key areas that we're going to be looking at today, and that is knowing what needs to be in a suitability report, and so in the underlying template to meet the FCA and COBS rules. And by COBS rules, I mean the Conduct of Business Sourcebook, and that's basically what we should be doing and how we should be doing it. We're also going to look at other areas that we should be including in a report to put a client in an informed position about the advice that we're actually giving to them. And we're going to look at ways to make reports more visually appealing and more engaging for the client, so they actually end up being things that a client will really want to read. So, before we get going, we're going to have a quick poll about how you guys are actually doing your suitability reports and how you're using templates. So Lee is going to do a poll for us.
Voila, there we go. So what do you currently use in your business? So do you use any of the following in your business currently? If we can have as many of you participate as possible, that would be absolutely fantastic. Caroline, what do you expect to see here?
I was actually expecting more report writing software, if I'm being honest.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I thought lots of people would be using it, but I guess using template, I mean, I guess it depends whether they're using templates through their CRM or document designer, or whether they're just simply using a Word document, which is often the easiest way to do it. But I was expecting to see more using report writing software, so I'm a bit...
You're taken back by that, right?
I am, yeah.
We've got another 2 polls coming up to throw Caroline off. So keep up the good work, audience. This is really, really good. I'm going to show you the results now, Bruce. We're just going to let everybody get their votes in. I think everybody's pretty much there. We've had 80% of people participate. So we're going to end the poll, share the results. You should all be able to see the results now. So 84% of people are using templates, Caroline. And you thought that was going to be the other way, right?
Well, I thought a lot of people would be using templates in some form or another, but I actually thought that there would be more using report writing software. So I find that really interesting.
Good. And do you see that, with the clients that you work with, what background are they coming from before they come to you for your services? Are they using report writing? Are they very much doing all the templates themselves still?
I think, well, it depends really on the clients that they're working with, because I've got some who will actually use report writing software if it's a really, really simple report that needs doing.
Okay.
But most of the work that I do with my clients, they get me in because it's the complex stuff. So it's actually bespoke reports that we're writing. I mean, I obviously have base templates that we use. But most of the time it's quite complicated stuff that really needs to be quite bespoke. So it's yeah, for me it's templates for me rather than any report writing software, because I don't think it's geared up for the complex reports where you've got a client with really complicated planning needs.
Right, gotcha.
Well, that's just my view. Obviously.
Yeah, exactly. So Sharon, back over to you.
Okay, super. So going back to consumer duty, but we're just going to touch on this briefly. So as with all communications, as I mentioned before, with suitability reports, we need to make sure that we're really meeting our consumer duty obligations for the client understanding rule. But looking at it from a different perspective, has consumer duty actually impacted on suitability reports from a regulatory point of view? And the answer to that in reality is no, because whilst consumer duty has reinforced our obligations on how we explain things to clients, it's not actually creating anything new in the way that we should be communicating with them. Under the regulations and in the principles of business, we've always had to make sure that when we communicate with clients, we do that in a way that's clear, fair, and not misleading. So why is that important other than making sure that we're meeting the regulations? Well, it's interesting because the National Literary Trust and the government did a study quite a few years ago now, and this showed that the average reading age of an adult in the UK is that of a 9-year-old. And whilst it's unlikely that many of our clients would have a reading comprehension of a 9-year-old, it's something that we really need to bear in mind, because it means that what we need to do is make sure that our reports are really simple, really clear, and really easy for everybody to understand. And we need to be making sure that we're writing them in plain English as well. So to meet our responsibilities to the client and ensure that we're also meeting compliance requirements, what actually needs to be in a suitability report? And so obviously in the source template that's used to produce it. So if we go back to the Conduct of Business Sourcebook rules again, in the COBS 9.4, which covers off what we need to include in suitability reports, there's actually only 3 things that are explicitly stated in COBS that need to be included in a suitability report. I mean, obviously, this is accepting the stakeholder paragraph, obviously. This is just for in general. So we need to be including what the client's demands and needs are. And by demands and needs mean, what are their goals? What are their financial planning objectives? What is it they're trying to achieve? We also need to include why the recommendation is suitable for those demands and needs, and bearing in mind the client's circumstances. And the final thing that's listed in the Conduct of Business Sourcebook is any possible disadvantages or drawbacks that that recommendation will have for the client. And that could include costs and charges as well. However, we all know that it's a regulatory requirement to provide a client with a suitability report. But the purpose of a suitability report in reality is to put them in that informed position that we were talking about before, so that they're able to make a decision on the advice and recommendations being given. However, sometimes with some reports, it might not always feel like that's the case, or that's the driving force behind it. And it might often feel like the report is that making sure we're putting the client in an informed position isn't actually the driving force behind that report. And you'll see what I mean by that in just a moment, because Lee's got another poll for us.
Here we go. Let's try and throw Caroline off for the second time, and then we'll go for the hat trick after. So what we've got here is, who is the focus? So who do you feel is the primary focus of your report? So we're talking about the client, compliance, or the FOS?
Yeah. And what I'm talking about here, because don't forget the poll is anonymous, is who, when you're writing your report, do you feel that you're actually writing that for the client, or is there always an eye on compliance and the FOS when you're doing it? And I know for some businesses, I would say it's trying to find that balance, but who do you personally feel that your business is writing that report for?
And what do you think, Caroline?
I'll wait till the poll's finished. And then
No,
I'll talk
come
about
on.
what I think. What do I think? I think it should always be the client.
Yeah. Okay.
Always be the client. Because I've held this view forever, that if you're looking after the client, then the compliance will just take care of itself. Because if you're doing everything that you should be, then the compliance side of it, with treating the customer fairly, making sure that you've got the message across, of course, it's going to just take care of itself, is my view.
Through your experience, where do you tend to see the focus on reports? Through the maybe the advisors that you worked with previously, or the firms that you worked in before. Have you seen a pattern that it steers more towards compliance than it does the client? Have you seen a bit?
I would say in the smaller businesses that I've worked in and the businesses that I work with now, the driving force is the client, hands down, without question. In bigger businesses that I've worked with and consolidators, I would say, whilst I guess lip service is kind of paid to, this is what we're doing, this is for the client, it doesn't always necessarily feel like that. It always necessarily makes it feel like it's more of a back covering exercise rather than an actual client focused tool, if you see what I mean.
So there's quite a divide on the results there. Are you surprised by that, or do you think that's roughly what you expected, would you say?
It's kind of what I expected, but I would have hoped that it's higher on the client side, but I can understand that, because it depends on the business that you're in. And I'm really glad actually that people have been honest about it, because if everybody else, oh no, client, obviously client, but I'm really glad that people have kind of, and I can appreciate that, because obviously, you need to make sure that you're protecting the business as well. But I find it really interesting, because I was expecting the client to be higher than that.
So that's 2 out of 3 we've got you on so far with these polls. So we are on for a hat trick, guys and girls. Come on, we'll get her on the third one.
Super. Okay, so let's move on. So now that we've covered off everything that the COBs say needs to be in the report, but the FCA have actually also previously issued quite a lot of guidance around what they would actually expect to see in a report over and above what's in the COBs rules. So I'm going to share with this, and you don't have to worry about reading it all, because it is actually going to get sent out afterwards to everybody. And this is taken from a historic FCA information sheet from quite some years ago, but all of this is still absolutely relevant today. And it's a really good guide about what they would expect to see in a standard suitability report. So it's really giving a roadmap of the sections that need to be included in an underlying template. Like I said, there's quite a lot of information there, so that is going to be sent out to everybody afterwards, just so that you can have a look through and kind of measure it up against your own reports. But the FCA have also really helpfully summarised the information in the sheet into the key areas that they would expect to be including in a report. So in addition to these, we obviously need to be including costs and charges for any recommendations, as well as cost comparisons for any replacement business or switches and transfers that we're doing. But the FCA have also said that they want us to really consider how we're conveying this information over to clients, so we can make sure that it's actually being delivered in a way that a client is going to understand, having, being mindful of the client's circumstances as well, and any vulnerabilities that they may have that would impact on them understanding what it is that we're actually trying to tell them. So based on this guidance, the things that the FCA would be expecting to see in a report, as a minimum, I would say, is maybe a summary about the client's situation, however brief that may be. They want to be talking about the risk profile, and in particular, the client's capacity for loss. They want to know what the goals and objectives are and have them really clearly detailed. And they want to make sure that obviously that we're really tying back the recommendations to those goals and objectives, and it's really, really personalised. And we need to be including any risks and drawbacks of the recommendations that we're actually making, so the client can have the full picture. We need to include any costs and charges that are going to be impacting on the report, that are going to be impacting on the advice. And we also need to cover off any goals and areas that aren't being addressed. And that might be something that you're going to be dealing with later, or something that the client has said that they actually don't want to, they don't want any help on at that moment.
Okay. And
the report should always be about the client, and any non-specific or generic information, such as any technical plan details, should be included in the appendices, because the aim is to keep the report really simple, really succinct, and really relevant to the client. And you might want to be including other sections as well to make sure that your report is compliant. But the key thing to remember is, like I was saying before, who is the report actually for? And including lots of additional sections that don't actually add any real benefit to the report or help the client put them in more of an informed position could actually lead to the report not being read if it's overly long. Mm. And the really important thing also to remember is, whilst everything does not necessarily need to be included in the report, you don't need to have every single detail about that client in the report. It does need to be in the file. And it's the file that demonstrates the suitability of a recommendation. It's not the report alone. And this is often, I think, something that gets confused, that we need to have everything, belt and braces, kitchen sink in the report. And we actually don't, as long as it's all supported by the file. So with that in mind, talking about overly long reports, there's a couple of really common issues that I've certainly seen over the years with reports, which often will come from the underlying template that's actually being used to produce them. So what you actually get is you'll get reports that are very long, really complicated, and really difficult for the client to follow. They'll often contain lots of jargon and TLAs. And by TLAs, I mean 3-letter acronyms, because financial services is absolutely riddled with them. You've got FAD, you've got ISAs, loads more than just those. But you've got loads and loads and loads of TLAs, and the client isn't actually necessarily going to understand what they are. Quite often, you'll find that reports are really not personalised at all to the client, really not client-specific, and they're almost an insert name here type of job, which could actually just relate to anybody rather than that specific client. And quite often, I see reports that really focus on the features of the product being recommended, rather than the benefits that that's actually going to bring to that particular client. And often all of these issues stem from having a report template that's not client focused at all, and includes lots of standard text and lots of really generic wording that could be about absolutely anybody rather than that particular client. Mm. And this will often lead to having really highly complex reports because the underlying template is overly long and overly complex. And that's not going to lend itself to having a really good personalised report. So how can we make sure that we have a really robust template, but also ensure that the end report is really personalised to that client? So having a template that allows for lots and lots of personalisation is always going to end up with a really client-specific report. And where there's lots of really generic standard wording, there can be a tendency for the reports to almost become a bit sausage factory. But there are ways to make sure that this doesn't happen. And none of these are groundbreaking or new, but they're just really simple fixes that you can use with your report templates. And the first one is by ensuring that sections that should be personalised, so the About You section, your goals, or whatever it is that you want to call them, how the recommendation meets your needs, are really specific and tailored to that client. We need to be using personalised financial goals rather than generic investment objectives, such as I want to invest for growth. It means nothing. And we need to make sure that any reasons why section are actually explaining the benefits of the recommendations for that specific client, rather than just laying out technical features of the product, such as it's tax-free, you won't pay tax when you would take a withdrawal from an ISA. What does that mean to that client? And by making a report all about the client right from the very first page, they're much more likely to be engaged and really keep reading. And we've even been told this by the SCA. They have provided masses of feedback on suitability reports over the years. So these two sections here are from a thematic review that was done in 2012, and it's called Assessing Suitability. And it was one of the things, the forerunners to Consumer Duty and to all sorts of different client initiatives that came as a result. And this is 15 years old this year, but everything that is in that thematic review, I think, is still relevant today. And it's just talking about making sure that everything that we include in a report is specific to the client and personalised to the client. So how do you go about doing that with a template? Well, like I said, there's some really simple fixes that can be made to ensure that the reports don't become just another sausage. So what you can do is avoid any standard wording in the sections that should always be personalised. So instead of using standard paragraphs, you can use prompts about what should be included in a particular section. So then you'll know that that actually is specific to that client. And you can do this by having a knowledge bank within your business. And you can add to this knowledge bank all the time, and you can use good example wording from previous client reports so that people can then crib from that and personalise it into their own suitability report. And by doing that, you'll have it may take a little bit longer to actually complete a report initially, but what you'll do is you'll have much more personalised reports as an end result. And the reason why I'm saying this, I can actually give you an example. So a couple of years ago, I created a suite of templates for one of my clients. And in that template, I put some example wording about objectives, about background information, about how recommendations would meet that particular client's needs. And when about a year later, I came to do a peer review of one of their reports, the information that was in the final suitability report was almost identical to all of the suggested wording that I'd put in the template. So that's again, it's either the same client, or what an absolute coincidence that this client has got almost identical goals, almost identical reasons for doing what they're doing, and almost identical background. So this is why when you are using a report that's even got suggested wording in it, you could end up with all of your reports looking identical because people are just simply using the standard wording that's in there. So like I say, it might take a little bit of getting used to at first, but the end result, the quality of the reports that you're actually producing will be much, much better and much more personalised to clients. So once we've looked at all the areas that would be included in the report template, we now need to look at how can we actually lay them out so that how can we actually lay them out and present them so the report is really engaging and really inviting for the client and something that they're going to want to read. So before we look at that though, Lee's got another quick poll for us. And how often, the poll is, how often do you review your report templates?
There we go.
And I'm not talking about just the tax year end and budget updates and things like that. I'm talking about how often do you look at them? How often do you look at the style, the format, the tone of voice, that kind of thing?
What do you think, Caroline, as an industry standard? Do you think people are doing it more often than not?
I think it probably depends on the size on the business, because when it's a big business, changing a template can be a hugely cumbersome thing. Having worked in a big business, if you wanted to make a change in the template, it would need to go through some sort of approval committee, and then you'd have to do it and things like that. But I think with smaller businesses, because they're much more nimble, they can just make changes as and when they need them. But I would probably be expecting people. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it depends on legislation as well, because if something massive in legislation changes, then obviously you're going to change your report templates pretty much immediately. So
yeah. Last couple of seconds, last couple of votes, and we'll share the results. Are you surprised by these results, Caroline?
No, I think no, yeah, I think it would be. Yeah, that's about where I would have thought it would be on this occasion.
Good. Good.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's good actually that people are doing it, more people are doing it more than annually, because things can always be improved and changed and updated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so moving on. Like I said, the first thing we're going to be looking at when we're talking about how we can make reports more inviting, more engaging for clients, we're going to look at graphics, because using graphics means that you're not just going to have banks and banks and banks of text all the way through the template. So picture is worth 1,000 words. And often a graphic can be used to explain an idea or a concept. So this is a graphic that I use to explain the component parts of a client's risk profile. And the thing to remember is, if you are going to use graphics and things like this, always keep your language within them really simple, because if you end up putting lots of complicated language in the thing that you're trying to make simple, then obviously it's not going to have the effect that you want it to. So I use graphics all the time in my reports, and I put this together using Smart Art in Microsoft. I did that in PowerPoint, and you can access it in Word and Excel. And it's really just a case of playing around with something until you find something that you like the look of. And there's lots of tools around that you can use to build graphics. So you've got Canva, Google Draw, and obviously you can use AI. And so I have heard a lot of people saying that they're using AI for reports and graphics. So I asked Copilot to do something for me. So bearing in mind, this is what I was trying to get out of Copilot. I asked it to produce a Venn diagram for me. And I was really, really specific about what I wanted, but it was either being willfully disobedient or it was just not listening to me, because it just kept coming out with nonsense like this. So I'm not quite sure that Copilot is quite ready for your risk profile graphic at the moment. And I'm going to be sticking with Smart Art, but it just goes to show that it's getting there, but it's not quite where it needs to be at the moment.
Completely agree. When you look at the likes of Copilot and ChatGPT, the creation of images is probably a little bit off. But there are absolutely AI platforms out there, like your Gamma, like your Canva, and there's other things out there where you can get a lot closer to the final article, and the text within those are customizable. But as we know, with Copilot and ChatGPT, that's the output. You can't really change any of the wording, but there are other stuff out there as well that you can do.
I remember asking it to do something once and it couldn't spell compliance or paraplanner, so I thought I maybe won't use that. So
no, that's the problem, isn't it? That's the problem.
Even after you tell it how to spell paraplanner, it's still
it can't. It just won't do it.
Like just willfully disobedient, like I said. Anyway.
Yeah.
So so there's lots of things that you can do. There's lots of tools that you can use to actually create some really nice graphics to break your report up. So I also use icons from time to time in reports if there's something really important that I need to draw a client's eye to. So I use a system that's called Flat Icon Premium, and it's about £9 a month, and it's really good because you can go in and you can customize any graphics that you want. You can put them in your corporate colors. And there's also, I mean, there's thousands and thousands and thousands in there. And it's just a really good way, if you've got quite a long and complicated report, it's a really good way of really drawing a client's eye to something that, you know, this is important, that you need to read this, or, you know, we need to make sure that we do this. So using icons in a report is often a really good way to kind of just make it a little bit more engaging and a little bit more interesting. And another thing that we do in reports, we often have to convey a lot of numerical data, particularly around costs and charges. So how can we do that? There's a number of ways that we can actually do this. So in this example, it's just laid out as text, but I personally don't think that this is particularly easy to follow. I don't think it's particularly engaging, and it does get the information across, but it's not the most easy to digest. So I'm sure you all probably use tables in your report, and this just shows exactly the same information that we had on the previous slide. But I personally think this is much easier to digest. It's much clearer for a client, and it's much more simple to understand. And tables are also a really great way of expressing cost comparison and difference in charges as well for a client. So it's really simple and easy to follow, and they can see what they're paying and what they're going to be paying and any difference between the two. So the next section is formatting and readability. And this is the one that I've done this a few times with people, and it will just split a room completely.
Really?
So it's it's quite an interesting one, this one. So what I'm going to show you, you don't have to read it. It's purely to demonstrate a point. So this I personally find really difficult to read. I would not read this if this was presented to me. I would really struggle to read this. And there's quite a few reasons for this. And the first one we start off with, this is what's called a serif font. And a serif font are basically the ones with the flicky extra bits on them. And examples of these would be things like Times New Roman, Georgia, Garamond, that kind of thing. And studies have shown that sans serif fonts, they're the ones without the flicky kicky bits, are much, much easier for people to read because they haven't got all of the extra bits that draw your eye.
Yeah.
And examples of sans serif fonts are things like Open Sans, Arial, Helvetica, Calibri, that kind of thing. And font size is really important as well. And you might be tempted, we've all done it, to make the font size a bit smaller so you get more on a page, so your report is shorter. But what that does is it just makes it more difficult for a client to read. And I would always be going, depending on the font, I would always be going for at least probably a size 11. And another thing is line spacing. Now, this is a single line spacing here, but it's really, really important to make sure that you've got a really nice line spacing in your report and so in your template, because when it's all squashed up like this, it also makes it really, really difficult for somebody to read it, and it's not engaging at all. Now, this is the thing that will either people are going, I hate it, or I love it. It's like Marmite. So justification and formatting in the alignment. So the way that we've got this here, this is what's called justified text, and that's when it goes from margin to margin. And the way that this is done is by having extra, some of the words have more spaces between them so that they can actually get the margins to meet. And there's been lots and lots of studies that have shown that where text is justified, it's actually more difficult for people who've got reading disabilities like dyslexia to actually follow and to actually read because of the way that it's lined out. And the history of justified text, just in case you're interested, is it comes from when newspapers used to be printed. And it was the way of making as many columns fit on a page as possible. So you would have justified text, so you could have 6 or 7 columns. But left aligning your text, where you have a straight line on the left-hand side and then a ragged right, it's called, is actually much, much easier for people to read because they haven't got all of these extra spaces and extra bits in the alignment that makes it difficult to read. And a lot of people think that they don't like left align because it's messy. It's really messy. We like it like this because it's neat and tidy. And what I always say is you have to remember is it's not about you. What we're trying to do is we're trying to make our end report easier for the client to read. And if that involves having it ragged right rather than justified, then that's what we should be doing, because it's not our report, it's the client's report. And the final point I'm going to say on here is white space. There's absolutely no white space at all in this piece of text. And what you have to think of is your report is like a conversation that you're having with a client. And hopefully, unless you're me, which I do it all the time, if you were having a client with somebody, you wouldn't talk and 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 talk without pausing, without having a breath, without letting them take in what you're saying. And that's what you have to think about of white space in a report. It's a pause for breath for that client, and it gives them just a moment to take in what you've written in the paragraph before, and then they can move on to the next one. And it makes it much, much easier and much more engaging for a client to actually do that, and much easier for them to actually digest what they're saying.
I have to agree with that in many aspects, in outside of just your suitability reports as well. If you put that into perspective in anything, in any kind of content that you receive, imagine if you received an email with that amount of content. That's not even going to get read in my eyes. If it was broken down into smaller parts and it was easier on the eye, I'd probably give it a chance to read it. If it was a letter or whatever it may be, you need that spacing just to, like you said, have a breath and go again, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, it's just horrible.
Yeah,
I can't even.
Yeah.
So, bearing all that in mind, if we apply all of that to the same piece of text, this is what you'll actually end up with. So this is exactly the same wording. And all I've done is increase the font size from 10 to 11. The line spacing's gone from single to 1.4. We've got left aligned. We've now got colour and white space as well. And yes, it is slightly longer. It's obviously going to make it, take up more space if you actually do that in a report. But if I received this compared to what was on the previous slide, this would be something that I would, oh yeah, I can read this, that's no problem. This is going to kind of attract my attention a lot more than the one before.
Yeah.
So it's really important again, and it can be really difficult, particularly if you're like me, you can get quite precious about your reports because I wrote that. But what we have to remember, and this is what I keep going back to, is it's not about us, it's not our report. So it doesn't really matter how we like doing something or how we like something laid out. It's about making it more engaging and more appealing for the client so they are more likely to read it.
So is this where you see a divide from your first text to the second text?
All the time.
Really?
People hate left aligned. Some people hate justified. If a client said to me, I really want it justified, I would explain to them all of the things that I've just said. But if they were absolutely adamant, then obviously it's their report at the end of the day. But it can split a room of people.
Really?
It's really interesting. You should have done a poll on that.
Well,
should have done a poll on who does left aligned.
I'm keen to hear people in watching the webinar in the chat. Are you more on the first style and layout of text, or are you more aligned to the second? Feel free to drop a first or a second, just see what your preference would be. And left aligned all the way. Becky's left aligned all the way. All the same things, Caroline. There we go. Justify. Yeah.
I'm team left aligned all the way. All the way.
Interesting.
So we'll just have a quick roundup. So you've got that. So yeah, the key things are to remember, don't get hung up on the length of the final report because it's going to be what it will be to put the client in that informed position. As long as it's engaging and it's interesting, it's something that they want to read, it really doesn't matter. Make sure that you're using lots of colour and graphics in your report. Make it really engaging for the client and really, really attractive to them to read. Make sure you're leaving plenty of white space so that they have that pause for breath. Make sure you're using a really good reader-friendly font and a really good amount of line spacing. And again, don't justify your text because aside from the fact that it's horrible, it makes it much easier for the client to read.
Yeah.
So I can move on to the next one. So I'm just going to show you quickly, what does that all look like in real life? So I can show you an example template that I would be using. This is just a really simple investment template that I use with clients. So can you all see? Can you see?
We can indeed.
You can.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so using plenty of colour, plenty of graphics, and just having some prompts to actually say what it is that you would expect to see in that particular section. Now, obviously, there is going to be standard wording that's applicable to all reports that you can keep in there, but that's generally going to be kept to a minimum, and it's just, you know, HMRC regulations, you know, taxation, that kind of thing. But what I tend to do, like I say, is try and keep as little standard wording and standard text in a report as possible, so it's always personalised to the report. Make sure that you're using graphics, you've got your right font, your right colours. And what I tend to do also with the recommendations, I separate them out, and so I'll have a wrapper section, which I'll talk about if you're using an ISA, a bond, a GIA, for example, and then the provider and portfolio recommendations. So you're not having to repeat things every single time. The key thing with the report template is make sure you're saying it once, say it right. So if you've got an ISA and a pension and a bond and a GIA, all with the same provider, I wouldn't be repeating information about that provider for every single one of those different wrappers. And then obviously we've got costs and charges with the tables that we've got there. And then any additional considerations that they might have. So that is just a really simple template there. And like I was saying before, you can also use a knowledge bank, and you can add to these whenever anybody's got any good wording in a report, just add to it so that there's more stuff there for people to crib. So these are some examples from previous reports that you can go in and have a look at and think, yeah, that applies to my client. I can tailor that, I can change that. So I've done in this particular one, it's actually done in the same format of the report. So you can just, you know where to look exactly straight away for the section that you're looking at. So bearing all that in mind, this is an example of a finalised suitability report that would go to a client. So we've just got really simple wording, really well spaced out sections. Everything is personal to that client because we haven't used standard text. And then we've got all the different sections as well to keep things really simple and really clean for the client. We've got a couple of icons chucked in just to make sure that they haven't missed anything. And really simple tables to explain all of the different costs and charges for them.
Very easy on the eye, that one, isn't it?
And that is it.
That's it.
Oh, I think if anyone's got any questions, or are there any questions in the chat?
Yeah, feel free to ask any questions. You did absolutely create a bit of a divide with the left and the justified. There is absolutely a divide going on. Preference, obviously, yeah, absolutely. But thank you all for firing over some questions on that as well and participating in today's webinar. We'll send out all of the slides, some of the info on the FCA, the bit of blurb and everything in between. That's all going to come over to you on an email. Left aligned, most definitely. Sunil would like a copy of the template.
No,
I don't know.
There's a sheet that's got ideas that you can use. There's an info sheet coming out that's got all the ideas, but I don't tend to share my templates. No.
Fantastic. But Becky loved it. Fantastic. We're doing the right thing. That's what we like to hear, Becky.
That's what I like to hear.
That's what we like to hear. If there's any other questions, just reading a question here, bear with me. I haven't suddenly gone all quiet. Yes, okay, fine. So using standardized text, it's having the time to freeform everything as well. Did you find it a little bit more time? Well, obviously it's more time consuming, but would you say your knowledge bank really helps you out with where, you know, going to, well, I suppose you don't go to and from too much, you know, it's your template and your knowledge bank, or do you find?
I think it comes with practice, to be honest. I can understand it would be take longer initially.
Yeah.
But once you get, it's like kind of muscle memory. Once you get into the habit of it, you kind of you'll know, oh well, I'll do it like this and I'll do it like that. And whilst it may be hard to personalize stuff for all clients, it doesn't really, that's what we have to be doing. That's what we should be doing. So if it takes a little bit longer than it does, I mean, I know that's easy for me to say, but the thing is, you shouldn't be sending out generic reports. You just shouldn't, because it doesn't demonstrate the suitability in a way that's personalized to that client.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just my view. I mean, I understand obviously people have time constraints and people have, you know, pipelines and things like that. But once you do it a few times, it will automatically be in there, and you think, oh, I can use that. That relates to this, and this relates to that. So, I mean, I appreciate it. It will take longer, but if you're sending out sausage factory reports, then you know the compliance will not be taking care of itself in those situations.
Absolutely. We are in the process of hopefully getting ourselves CPD accredited. So when it comes to CPD certificates, to get real structured CPD accreditation, we're currently in the process of getting that. So as soon as that is available to us, that all of our webinars, our weekly webinars, you'll be able to get a CPD certificate. All right. So don't think it's going to happen on this one, but hopefully the next one next week we might be in a better place to talk about it. Riz says it's nice to see that their templates are on point. We love that. Just wondering, what would you say the same requirements for suitability reports and top-up letters, you know, in terms of your requirements?
I think, well, with top-ups, it's really what's in the COBS report. It's really what's in the COBS rules about top-ups. But generally, I would be referring back to the original suitability report, which is absolutely fine if nothing major has changed. You need to be covering off costs and charges, and you need to be covering off disadvantages and things like that. But generally, if you've had a really robust suitability report that you can refer back to, in my experience and my understanding, having spoken with compliance firms, it's absolutely fine just to refer back to previous reports, because it's part of an ongoing piece of advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Rachel, picking up on your comment about, you know, advisors and it's like getting blood out of a stone, absolutely. But AI is a huge player in that. You know, it seriously is. If your business is using AI, just in terms of transcripting a meeting, there are so many free tools out there that can plug into your Zoom, that can plug into your Teams. There are things that you can take in a meeting that will transcribe a whole face-to-face meeting. It shouldn't be like getting blood out of a stone anymore. Absolutely, it used to be 100%. It depends on what they're telling you and the notes they're writing. But now you can have a full transcript and interact with that as much as you like and get everything from that meeting. All right. And at the end of the day, the advisor shouldn't object to it, because it just makes their life a hell of a lot easier, because they're not having to keep going back and forth with the paraplanning staff and confirming and elaborating. So there's absolutely AI out there, Rachel, that can step in, hopefully.
Yeah, I've got clients who use. I'm an outsourcer, obviously, and when I work in with my firms, I've got clients that are using Saturn, and I've got clients who are using advisory AI. And it's fantastic, you know, because all of the info, it's just so clever, and it pulls out everything generally that you would need. I mean, obviously, from time to time, you just need to go back and clarify things. But the AI that some of my advisors are using is just phenomenally good, really good.
It really is. And for those that have, I can imagine, some obviously are in the WhatsApp community. We actually ran a paraplanner survey, if you like, and within that paraplanner survey, I did ask the wonderful question, if you had a magic wand. And the good thing about Microsoft Forms, it brings the most popular word used to light. Can anybody guess what that most popular word used was? 10 points if you can. So I asked the question is, if you had a magic wand, what one thing would you change about your job role? It's a really interesting survey. So if anyone's got any ideas as to what you think was the most highlighted word, please feel free to share it. Yeah, it's been a great session. I think compliance, Bruce. No, try again. Let me see if I can grab it quickly. It's on forms, so I might be able to. Tax year end.
And it's always there. It's always the same time every year. It's like Christmas, isn't it? And you're still never quite ready for it.
Yeah, exactly. Where are we? Can I find it? There we go. See if I can see the results. Over 200 paraplanners participated in this survey. Oh, wow. Okay. Let's have a look. Can I share my screen? I must be able to share my screen. Let's have a look. Okay, so if we look at, if you had a magic wand, one thing which you changed about the power planning job role, advisor is the biggest. I see advisor a hell of a lot of times in that report. 206 people said advisor. I can see advisor 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times there. So again, just relating back to Rachel's getting blood out of a stone, and it seems to be the biggest problem within the power planning world. Yeah, no, look, this is an incredible survey. We're going to be getting the results out to everybody as well. So, look, if you're interested in participating in that survey, I just want to know what people see power planning as. Is it a career, a stepping stone? It could be a bit of both. We talk about what benefits everybody's getting. It's a real in-depth survey in the power planning world. There is another wordy one up here as well. What are your thoughts on use of AI? So it's really, really insightful. It's a really good survey, not just because I put it together, but it is a good survey. Because I've changed a few things and moved a few things around, I seem to have lost everything that's going on. So if I've missed any questions, Becky, text here, and automation, compliance, and not one of you said advisors. You must all work in the best businesses with the best advisors. If you've got any questions, please fire away. Appreciate we've hit the 11 o'clock mark. You should all be well busy with tax year end right now. You've got your last few days. Any final questions? If not, thank you all so much for joining us, and hope to see you at our next webinar or even our event. Are you in London? Come and see us. Great session. Thanks, Riz. Thanks, Natalie. Thanks everybody. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.
Amazing. Looks like we've got no more questions. So thank you everybody for coming, and see you all very, very soon.